Good Wednesday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for May the 1st. Today we are reading together, excuse me, the 53rd Psalm. Psalm number 53 is titled by the translators in my Bible, A Portrait of Sinners. I think this would classify as a teaching psalm, and uh, we might read a psalm like this and think of other people, those who might say, even with not just with their hearts, but with their minds, there is no God. But what I want to think about for us is this: do we act like fools? As we read through this text and as we see the way David describes these individuals, we need to ask ourselves, do I behave like a fool sometimes? And we'll kind of talk a little bit more about what that means here as we get toward the end of the psalm. But thank you so much for tuning in today. We have made it through, let's count, January, February, March, and April. We have made it through 4 months of daily Bible reading, which, if your math is like my math, and if we together are correct, that means we have made it through 1/3 of our reading for this year, which makes total sense because we just got through recently Psalm number 50, which is a third of the 150 Psalms. So I'm really happy for our read so far, and I hope that it's been a blessing to you as we've been working our way through the Psalter this year. I hope that it has expanded your knowledge of Scripture and your knowledge of God, and that we've been able to take these wise teachings, these beautiful writings, and that they have made our faith stronger, and that we have greater confidence in God, and that we've been warned by Scripture, that we've been rebuked by Scripture, that we have been instructed and taught by Scripture to be better followers of God even today. I feel so sorry for those who view the Old Testament as if it has lesser value than any other part of our Bible, specifically the Psalms, if it has any lesser value, or that if people think that it has any lesser value to us, that just could not be any further from the truth. It is a beautiful text. It is so rich and vibrant in its nature, and it's very much a blessing to us. And I hope that you feel that way, that you've been blessed by our read through Scripture so far this year. Let me get the text up on the screen, and we'll read together here the 53rd Psalm, Psalm number 53, beginning in verse number 1. Again, the title given by the translators in my Bible is A Portrait of Sinners. The superscription says, for the choir director on Mahalath, a maskil of David. Psalm 53, verse number 1, the fool says in his heart, there's no God. They are corrupt, and they do vile deeds. There is no one who does good. God looks down from heaven on the human race to see if there is one who is wise, one who seeks God. All have turned away. All alike have become corrupt. There is no one who does good, not even one. Will evildoers never understand? They consume my people as they consume bread. They do not call on God. Then they will be filled with dread, dread like no other, because God will scatter the bones of those who besiege you. You will put them to shame, for God has rejected them. Oh, that Israel's deliverance would come from Zion. When God restores the fortunes of his people, let Jacob rejoice, let Israel be glad. Psalm 53. Now, let's pause for a second and let me assure you, if you're feeling a bit of deja vu, well, actually, I'm going to say good on you. And I did not intend for that to rhyme, but I tend to do that from time to time. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Um, if you are having a bit of deja vu, though, that's okay, because this psalm, I'm going to give it 80. We'll go 81.7% of it is almost verbatim the same as Psalm 14. You might recall in our reading of Psalm 14, that would have been sometime late January, early February, I think. In that reading of Psalm 14, I may mention that, hey, later on in the year, we're going to read Psalm 53, and Psalm 53 is almost exactly like it. So let's recall Psalm 14. I want to read with you very quickly. Psalm 14 is a short psalm, and you'll notice again the similarities. Psalm 14 says, and it is actually given by the translator, the title, A Portrait of Sinners, which is the same here, A Portrait of Sinners. for the choir director of David. So we don't have this additional information that this is on the Mahalath, which is also spoken about in Psalm 88. And we're also not told that in Psalm 14 that this is a maskil of David, which I believe is a song of wisdom or teaching. But again, verse number 1, verse number 2, verse number 3, verse number 4. Now, beginning of verse number 5, we have a bit of difference. Verses 5 and 6 are combined into one single verse in Psalm 53, but they are different. Psalm 53 verse 5 is different than Psalm 14 verses 5 and 6. And then verses 7 of Psalm 14 and verse 6 of Psalm 53, those are similar as well. So the difference really is verse 5 and 6 in Psalm 14 and verse 5 in Psalm 53. So that's one difference. And there's a different emphasis there from the perspective that the idea of the text is getting at. But there's also another couple of other main differences. Number one, in Psalm 14, we have the covenant name for God being used on a number of occasions. Whereas in Psalm 53, we do not have the covenant name of God. We just have the general name of God, or word for God, the word that's translated God, Elohim, referring to a being of the spiritual realm. That's used in Psalm 53. Also, let's see, and then the difference in verses 5 and 6 of 14 and verse 5 of verse 53. So there are some differences, although generally it is all the same. So again, if you are feeling a bit deja vu-ish, that's okay. It means that you retained pretty well, and I appreciate you remembering that. If you didn't, though, that's fine as well. Let's note, for the benefit of the rest of us who don't have great memories, self included, let's work through this text for just a moment. Number 1, beginning of verse number 1, the fool says in his heart, there is no God. Now remember, we have to keep in mind that the ancients all believed in spiritual beings. They all believed in divinity of supernatural beings. They are not like people today who are enlightened, thinking that there is nothing more than the material world in existence. So whenever there is this idea that there's no God, it's not that they denied the existence of God, but instead it is the fact that they do not live as if there is a God. And what this reveals then, or how this is revealed, is by their destructive and evil behavior, which is described at the latter part of verse 1 going down through verse number 3. They are corrupt. They do vile deeds. There is no one who does good. I mean, God's looking down from heaven. He's looking on the human race. He's looking on the descendants of Adam to see if there's anyone who is wise, anyone who seeks God. But here's what he finds. All have turned away. All alike have become corrupt. There is no one who does good, not even one. Now, that might sound pretty familiar to you because this past Wednesday in our auditorium class, we read from Romans chapter 3, and the many quotations in verses 9, 10, and 11, I believe it is. The quotations from the Psalms, from the Psalter, that quotes part of this text, Psalm 53 and Psalm 14, just showing the depraved nature of mankind, that overall, generally speaking, people are evil. They again, it's not that they don't believe that God doesn't exist, but they simply ignore him, and they live as if they live as they want to live, and in doing so, they live as if there is no God. And guess what? That's a pretty bad place to be in. The author David bemoans, well, evildoers never understand. They consume my people as they consume bread. They do not call on God. Evildoers, if there is no God, and this is generally speaking for people, if there is no God, and if we as humans are the top of the food chain simply because we hit the evolutionary jackpot, then there's no reason for me not to be very selfish and self-centered in my behavior and the way I carry myself and the mindset that I manifest through that behavior. Because I'm not answerable to anybody. I do whatever I want to, and there's no reason for me to treat people like people. Because again, if there is a God and we are made in God's image, that gives us inherent value. But if that's not a reality, then why does it matter how I treat other people? It's not like I'm going to be held accountable for it. I mean, I might get in a little trouble with civil authorities, whatever. But once I'm dead, no big deal. So it's just natural for those who act as if there is no God to not treat those who are made in God's image as if they are what they are, which is extremely valuable in the eyes of God. But here comes the difference between Psalms 14 and Psalm 53. Back in Psalm 14, beginning in verse number 6, or actually beginning of verse number 5, then they will be filled with dread, for God is with those who are righteous. You sinners frustrate the plans of the oppressed, but Yahweh is his refuge. So in Psalm 14, the emphasis is on Yahweh caring for the righteous, on Yahweh providing for those who are afflicted and those who are oppressed. So that's the emphasis in Psalm 14. But here in Psalm 53, the emphasis is shifted to the other side of the coin to focus not on those who are oppressed, but those who are doing the oppressing. Then they will be filled with dread like no other, because God will scatter the bones of those who besiege you. You will put them to shame, for God has rejected them. The emphasis here is on God holding evildoers accountable. God will let them know that he is, and that he holds evil people accountable for their sins. Which, we're thinking about the flow of the Psalter. I mean, this is a good follow-up, excuse me, to Psalm 52, which David writes against Doeg that we read about on Monday. This evil person, and how God would hold him accountable. Well, here's just a more generic look at it, that the fool, which again ties in with another one of David's stories, the story of David and Nabal, Abigail's husband, who was a fool. Say the word fool in Hebrew is this word Nabal. Just interesting there that the guy's name literally means fool, and he acts very foolish. I'm sure that's only a coincidence. Nevertheless, the focus here is on the judgment of the wicked. Again, follows up well with Psalm 52. And now I'm just thinking about it, and I'm noticing Psalm 13, which is a plea for deliverance. And then that's followed up by Psalm 14, where God does deliver the oppressed. So we kind of have, we can see a little bit of the organizational thought, it seems, behind those who organize the Psalter. You have two of these Psalms that are very, very similar in nature, and you would put the one that focuses on deliverance after an entire psalm that talks about deliverance. And then here in Psalms 52 and 53, we would put this psalm, which has an emphasis on punishment for the wicked, after an entire psalm that is about punishment for the wicked, specifically those who are proud. So I hope that's helping us then to see a little bit of the organizational structure of the Psalter a bit better. And then the psalm finishes up with, oh, that Israel's deliverance would come from Zion when God restores the fortunes of his people. Let Jacob rejoice, let Israel be glad. Because here's the thing, whenever the good people are rejoicing because of God's blessings, that means that bad people have been punished. Because it is in many respects a zero-sum game whenever it comes to this aspect of reality. When good people triumph, that means that bad people are being punished. And conversely, whenever bad people are triumphing, it's often because good people are suffering in some way, shape, or form. And that's not good. But notice at the end of the day, with a just God, with the one who we can have complete confidence in, that he will do all things well, that he will hold the wicked accountable, that those who live as if he is not will in the end know with certainty that he is. What a powerful thought that is, that those who live as if he is not will know with certainty in the end that he is. And specifically, that he is the God who raised Jesus from the dead and has made him both now Lord and King. Which, think about it, Israel's deliverance would come from Zion, would come from God's home, and that being Jesus. It would come in the form of Jesus. Israel's deliverance is Jesus. And what does Jesus do? He does restore the fortunes of his people. And all Jacob and Israel, the people of God, will be glad and will rejoice in the lordship and kingship of Jesus. And part of that lordship and kingship of Jesus is that he will bring his enemies to destruction. So two Psalms, again, what did I say, 81.7%? I don't know if that's right or not, but vast majority of these two Psalms, Psalm 14 and Psalm 53, very much identical for the most part, but there is a different emphasis. In Psalm 14, God's upholding the righteous. Here in Psalm 53, he's punishing the wicked, and both those things have to go together because they show the just nature of our good God. And that, simply stated, our good God is. I appreciate you so much tuning in for this reading today. If you have any questions or comments about Psalm 53 or Psalm 14, since we mentioned it a good bit today, please feel free to leave that in the comments section below. I appreciate so much you taking some time to read. Again, we're looking forward to seeing everybody tonight for our Bible study at 7 p.m. at the church house, and especially looking forward to our studies coming up on Saturday and Sunday with our good brother Saif Al-Safir, talking about his conversion from Islam to Christianity, and just some good things that we can be encouraged by and hopefully learn about concerning getting conversations we might have with people of the Muslim faith. Friday, we will have our reading again as well. Psalm 54 will be our text, and I'm completely skipped over my sticky note here. I said earlier, we need to consider whether we are the fool, and we're going to think, oh, well, of course we know that we are. We believe there is a God, but do we act like it? That's a point I failed to mention. I apologize for that. Do we act like it? Do we act like there is a God? We can say there is all day long, but through our actions, through our behavior, through our speech, through our thoughts, we will show whether or not there is a God. And that is what makes all the difference. So I apologize for missing my bright pink or bright purple sticky note I had right here on my Bible. Nevertheless, on Friday, we'll be reading together Psalm 54, a little bit short psalm, a prayer for deliverance. Again, another Maskil of David, one of those psalms that gives us a little bit of historical context that we'll consider as we get into it on Friday. Again, thanks so much for tuning in. See you tonight. Get ready for our read on Friday. Get ready for our special study, taking up the most of our day on Saturday, but it'll be a great day together. I'm really excited for it, and I hope there'll be a blessing to each and every one of us. And again, invite your friends and family and neighbors to come join us as well. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Take care, and God bless.